and welcome to Wrestling and Everything, Coast to Coast, with your hosts, Buddy Sotello and Evan Ginzburg. And this week, my very special guest, a guy I've known for over 2 decades. And if you're ever gone to an indie show in Northern California in the last 20 years, you'll have most likely seen this man in action. It's Joshua Littell, or Sir Samurai, and welcome so much to our program this week. This time, my representative from the West Coast, and you provided the last couple of guests from the East Coast this week, so we want to give a little West Coast perspective.
Only fair. West Coast flavor this week.
Yes. So how are you doing in Sacramento? Joshua is based in Sacramento and runs SPW, Supreme Pro Wrestling, and has been a major part of a number of different federations and the Reno Wrestling Factory as well.
Yeah, I'm doing good, trying to stay sane in these dark times.
Yeah, well, it's I know that you guys have been doing regular shows since when did SPW do its very first show?
2000.
In 2000. So
April should have been our 20th anniversary show, but it obviously got canceled.
Yeah, no, that's a real shame, because all, indie feds really rely on the, crowds that they can maintain over time. It's you and I worked together in California Championship Wrestling for a number of years. I think you also made some appearances. Did you ever show up in Pro Wrestling Iron? That was a little bit. Yeah. I remember that too. So you were with a lot of the stars from that early 2000 area, and you've worked cards with Johnny Morrison or Hennigan, and of course the Reno Scum are guys you're extremely well familiarized with.
Yes, I've been beaten up by them many, many times.
Yes, I've had the pleasure of being choked by Lusted a Legend and being whacked around by Adam Thornstill. But I'm really happy to see them succeed. So what do you think has been one of the factors that's made some of these guys into big stars and has allowed them to succeed like they have?
It's really, I think, perseverance. A lot, like for many years, NorCal was described as a black hole. Nobody knew anybody from NorCal, but the people kept going, It was just announced today that Timothy Thatcher, who's from SPW, will have Kurt Angle referee his match on Wednesday. And that just comes from not giving up, not backing off, taking the bookings, getting your name out there. None of the guys are overnight sensations. They've all been doing it for 15 or 20 years.
Yeah, no, and that's one thing that Evan has talked about a lot too, is that, people are offered the opportunity, but they don't always take it. And that's one thing I've seen with you is that you've done a whole lot of hard work. And you're not. If no one's ever seen you work, I'd compare your work to a combination between Kevin Sullivan and Larry Zbyszko.
I'll take that as a compliment, no doubt.
Yeah. But your style is really like that. You understand a whole lot of ring psychology, and that's, I think, maybe gives to the level of longevity to why you've been able to stay in the ring and keep working at this. Do you think that has a lot to do with your ability to be involved over the decades?
Yeah, I think I'm not a one-trick pony. If you put me in there with a comedy wrestler, I can do comedy. If you put me in there with a hardcore wrestler, I can be as stupid as anyone out there. I can do technical. And it's just, I'm a firm believer that wrestling is situational. Every night requires something different. So you have to be flexible. You're a good guy. You're a bad guy. You're a coward. You're a hero. And it just, to really last for a while, you have to be able to just show up and go, okay, what do I have tonight? And be able to do it without a problem.
Yeah. Well, and what do you think, though, how do you read the psychology of your audience while you're doing it live? Because that's one thing I think you've always been an expert at.
I was taught that you listen to the audience. A lot of people, I don't want to come across as one of those old fart saying kids today don't understand, but I was definitely taught that you can't put the match together in the locker room because you don't know what the crowd's response is going to be. You can come up with ideas, you can come up with bullet points, if you will, but you have to see how the crowd's responding to figure out what story you need to tell. And it's a philosophy, you know.
And what do you think gives you that sort of edge? Like when you're in a particular crowd, what do you look for, or what are things that you're looking for to try to give you that sort of like, what clues do you get from audiences that allow you to tell a match psychologically?
Anything, really. It's the big thing I tell our students is your enemy nowadays is the people looking at their cell phones. You know, you've got the girlfriends who are there as a favor, or the parents. I always tell our students, we're not working for the people in the front row in the Ring of Honor or AEW shirts. We've got their money. They're going to show up. They're fans. The people we want to perform for are the mothers who have no interest in wrestling, or the people who are there as a favor, or the people who are there because they're coworkers on the show and they're only there to see one person. That's who I'm trying to perform for. Because as I said, the people who go to shows every weekend, they're in. You've got them. So you don't need to focus on them. I try to focus on the people who maybe it's their first show. They don't know. Even if I've worked a company 100 times, I try to walk the aisle with the assumption that nobody knows who I am. Nobody knows any history about me. So I have to reintroduce myself every month or every week, depending on how often the company runs.
Excellent. Yeah. No, that's a good idea, because I don't think we see that right now in the current wrestling products that often. You know,
right?
It's meant for, it's stuff that's meant so much for the hardcore fan that an average person that looks at it, especially with your average WWE show, is probably not going to want to stay tuned for much more than a few seconds, because they're just going to be, you know, and I don't want to get so into that part. That the idea of this show is not to talk match by match, give analysis over what happened with Raw or what happened in SmackDown. Although I will say, the last time I saw you in person was at the Raw show. Do you even remember this?
I don't.
It was. I walked into the Arco Arena. This tells you how long ago it was. I walked into the Arco Arena bathroom, and there was a guy wearing an SPW t-shirt. I was going to go, all right, SPW, and it was you.
Yeah. Okay. I remember that. Yeah.
And out of 18,000 people, and I go to so few matches at Arco. It was maybe the second last time I was in Arco before they closed it down for the Golden One Center in Sacramento, and I ran into you in the bathroom. So
that's right.
There's your coincidence there. But so I'd like to talk a little bit more about the wrestling school that both the one in SPW and the Wrestle Factory, which I feel are sort of like binary stars with each other, aren't they? Sort of. I mean, you have a lot of guys that work the Wrestle Factory shows in Reno. They come over to SPW, and the SPW guys go over to wrestle stuff at the Wrestle Factory in Reno. I've never been to the Wrestle Factory in Reno, but I've been to the SPW shows a number of times, and I even performed on a couple of them when you were back at the Colonial Theater. By the way, this was such a shame. Can you tell me just quickly about what happened with the Colonial Theater? Because you guys had it for forever.
We were at the Colonial Theater for years, and it became an issue where somebody else took over management and wanted to make more money. So wanted to charge us to use the parking lot for shows. Wanted to charge us to use the snack bar for shows. Wanted us to pay their security guards, and it just wasn't feasible. We weren't drawing enough to cover all the expenses. So we moved on. And then they changed management again, and different people, you're being obnoxious, different people have run shows since then. I've actually wrestled there multiple times, but we got a new ring, and our ring's an 18-footer, and it just doesn't fit there. So it's no longer...
You can bring your cat on.
I think she's going to do whatever she wants. She wants the spotlight. So yeah, it became an issue. We sold our 16-foot. We got an 18-foot. So we can't run the Colonial now because it just simply doesn't fit in the building.
Yeah, no, I performed there once. It was great for historical reasons.
Yes.
nothing else, you know. And it was a fun venue, but finding venues right now is got to be one of your greatest challenges, you know. How are you guys looking at trying to run shows in the future? There was just an announcement today saying that the WWE may look at just canceling house shows altogether.
I saw that. We're taking a wait and see aspect. I've noticed no one in Northern California has announced shows right now. I don't feel any pressure to be first. You know what I mean?
She is cracking me up.
Yeah, she's a ham. But yeah, we run now out of a indoor soccer arena that we have a really good relationship with. And the soccer arena actually didn't close down during COVID.
Huh.
So we could have run if we wanted to. I just chose not to. I'm not a scientist. I have a degree in English and I'm a waiter at a restaurant. So I don't know what's right for safety, but I'm not going to be asking wrestlers and fans to risk something just so that I could brag that I ran a show. So we're going to just sort of wait and see. And when things start opening up again, we'll be ready to open up again.
You know, that's one of the things that, you know, and not that this show is all about Dark Side of the Ring, but I had some time to binge watch it yesterday. So I watched the Herb Abrams one. And have you had an opportunity to see that yet? The Herb Abrams one yet, Evan?
Yeah, I saw it. I knew Herb Abrams. I was backstage at UWF in New York, and he was very nice to me. I have no complaints. I interviewed Lou Albano and John Tolis at one of his shows, and he put on quality shows. And I didn't see any crazy behavior. I mean, like a guy was running a wrestling show. The only thing I remember, which was a little quirky, he said to me, "You're not one of those Sheik guys who writes mean things about me, are you?" And I go, "No." You know, but I have a question, Samurai. We were talking about wrestlers getting out there and promoting themselves. I see online wrestlers reviewing Raw and SmackDown, or they have some petty personal feud with some local promoter or some indie guy who, you know, insulted them or whatnot. And I'm like, why don't you guys promote yourself relentlessly? I mean, what's your take on that as a promoter and wrestler?
I'm from a different generation, as you gentlemen are. I see no benefit in putting negative out on social media, whether you're talking about another wrestler or a fan or a promoter or a company that won't book you. I'm a firm believer that you should use social media to put positive energy out there. And it's funny because, you know, we were talking earlier about Timothy Thatcher wrestling on Wednesday for NXT with Kurt Angle as his referee. Timmy has no social media and he never has. Besides him, I can't think of anyone who's reached success without getting their name out there. Tim just did it through hard work. The rest of us sort of have to do whatever we can to make our names worth something.
So what specific advice would you give to young people, young wrestlers, you know, as far as self-promotion?
Promote everything you love. It amazes me how many wrestlers do shows and don't tell anyone that they're doing a show. Yes. They don't say that this Saturday I'm in Cleveland or that yesterday I was in Cleveland. That they only promote their home company, or they promote because they're excited about a specific match, but they're doing 5 other matches for 5 other companies that they're not sharing. You can't expect someone else to make your name worth something.
By the way, I'm wrestling tonight. They give you like 3 hours.
Right. Yes. Yeah. They share the show poster the morning of the show and be like, "Hey, in 3 hours, come see me."
Yeah. Brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and that's something you're always talking about, Evan. You know, Evan's run his radio show for years and years, and a lot of times people will no-show your radio show or when you had the TV show. People didn't, you know, show up for your TV show, and they wouldn't. You would say over and over again how it seems like these wrestlers want to. Their attitude is like, well, you're the promoter, so go promote me. But it's, you know, there's only so much you can get out there unless everybody pitches in and makes the show happen. The show doesn't happen.
What I find is this really twisted priority system where wrestling in front of the 37 people is more important than being on a show that could reach thousands of people, a TV or radio show, depending what level the show is on. I mean, why would you oversleep or miss the train or whatever the case may be to do a interview that could reach a sizable audience? And but they won't miss that indie show, believe me.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, that makes me want to delve a little bit deeper into how you run your wrestling school and what makes or breaks people as guys that you see that have what it takes to go from one level to the next level. Because I watched it too from the APW side of things, then the Pro Wrestling Iron side of things, then the California Championship Wrestling side of things from the back. And, seeing guys that you see that you go, God, they're great, but they need this to get over. Or, you know what, no matter how hard this guy tries, he's just never going to get over. What are some of the things that go into that from what you...
I think to get over or to get anywhere in this business, you just have to keep showing up. It amazes me the people who are 2 years in who get offered a booking an hour down the road and don't want to do it. The people who make it will drive all night to get a booking because they know being at a show increases their chances of getting their name out there. Being on their couch doesn't do anything. It's as simple as showing up. You can have the worst opponent and it can be the worst crowd, but you can get over with one person. And then maybe the next show you get a better opponent. Like, everybody has excuses or, it's not worth it because I'm wrestling wrestler X and he sucks. If you're good at what you do, you can make any interview or match or anything worth something. There's no benefit in saying no to anything. Yes, every show we do, we lose money. Accept it. And if you're not willing to do that, chances are 5 years from now, you're not going to be in the business because you're going to say no to every booking and then people aren't going to use you anymore. Everyone who's a success has put in so many miles. And you have to learn to like the taste of crap because you're going to eat a lot of crap. You're going to be used poorly or whatever. But that doesn't matter. If you're in front of a crowd, you have a chance to connect. And if you're not, you have no chance.
Let me play devil's advocate. What is the line where you go, okay, that's too much crap, too much exploitation? Because I've known wrestlers who said, I have 16 concussions, and they're in their 30s. And I'm like, dude, you should leave, man. It's not going to be, it's not worth not being able to recognize your kids one day,
Sure. It's situational. I haven't found that line yet. I have not been offered something where I've been like, God, I don't think it's worth it. The longest trips I've been on was driving Sacramento to Calgary for 2 shows for the Juggalos. They were doing a Canadian gathering, and we were partway into the trip. It was me and 2 other guys, and one of the other guys asked, hey, how much are we getting paid? And I realized I'd never thought to ask. I knew we were getting fed, we were getting put up in a hotel, and we were getting paid. That was enough. I was wrestling in a country I had never been to. So yeah, if you have a bunch of concussions, you should walk away. I'm 47. I know Vince is never calling me. There's no benefit in a 47-year-old, 5'9", 220-pound guy. But my goals are the experiences. I'm collecting stories. I'm collecting adventures, and I'm trying to pass it on to my students. So I've not yet gotten that email where I read it and said, yeah, it's not worth it. I mean, don't get me wrong. There have been a few. Like, if I have a choice between 2 shows and one's 500 miles away outside in a crappy rain and one's an hour away, I'll probably take the one that's an hour away and get home that night. Unless the other one's someplace I've never been. I really love going and working crowds I've never seen before. I love that challenge of knowing they have no idea who I am, and I'm going to walk out and they're going to pass judgment on me. They're going to be like, oh, who's this old guy? He can't do anything. Give me 10 minutes and they're going to be like, oh, that guy was great. So I love that feeling. But I don't have a wife and kids. I have no debt. I have no car payments. I make enough during my waiting tables when, the restaurant's open. So I personally can say yes. If you were to contact me and say, hey, there's a show in New York looking for guys, I'd find a way to get to New York because I've never been there.
Okay.
But again, as I said, I don't have a mortgage. I don't have children to feed, so I have a lot more freedom than a lot of people.
And what is your advice as far as dealing with various promoters? Because, you hear the old hot dog and a handshake, but what if they promised you $100 and all of a sudden it's a hot dog and a handshake? How do you handle a situation like that?
I'm not one to get violent. I've been lucky. I haven't been screwed a lot of times, but I believe the whole basis of wrestling behind the scenes is trust. If I'm going to wrestle someone and he says he can hit a 450, I have to trust that he can actually hit it. If a promoter says he's going to pay me X amount of money, I got to trust that he's going to pay me that money. And if he doesn't, then not only will I not go back, but I'll make sure that my circle knows this man is not honorable. He's going to blow a lot of smoke up your butt, but he is not reliable. I'm not going to show up at somebody's house with a baseball bat for $100 because it's not worth, the fear of getting arrested. But I will make sure that if someone screws me, my vast circle knows this guy is not going to take care of me. Okay. Because all we have is the trust. If you can't trust someone, you should not be working with them.
Okay, buddy.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted also, I've always wanted to ask you something I've never asked you directly. Is that where does the name Sir Samurai come from?
So it was in college, I guess, when I first got my first computer, and I enjoyed Japanese culture.
What was it? What was your first computer?
Oh, I don't even remember. It was something my dad bought. I think it was a built. Somebody put it together.
Like a 386 or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
But I needed an email address. So I wanted something with Samurai in it. Mr. Samurai, the Samurai, but of course those were all taken. And somehow I landed on Sir Samurai, and it was literally just an email address. And then I was getting my degree in English, and I was writing. So I decided to start writing about wrestling, doing book reviews, pay-per-view predictions, that type of stuff in the late 90s. So I had my own website, and that led to a company hiring me as a ring announcer. And I showed up expecting to be Joshua Littell. And he said, no, your website gets, a couple thousand views a day, so we'd like you to be Sir Samurai. And I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. I'm just thrilled to be ring announcing. I'm through it because I was going to go to the show anyway, And then I started training as a wrestler, and my trainer was like, no, you've already got an identity, so you'll just be Sir Samurai. It was never intended to be a gimmick or a gimmick name. It was literally just my email at AOL, which I still use to this day.
Now, here's a question. What made you decide to go from ring announcer to actually wrestle, in ring, regular, carry a match wrestler?
So when I first started ring announcing, I was doing it for whatever random companies I could get work for. But I was attending SPW shows as a fan. They were the measuring stick in Sacramento. They had the best production, the best roster. So, and they were running.
Who was, sorry to interrupt, but who was running SPW at that time?
The big, ugly J.D. Bishop.
Yes, another great wrestler from Northern California. Well, I do hope to get on our show one of these days, too.
Yeah, and Ugly was the one who trained, like, John Morrison. That was probably his most famous student. But also trained Timothy Thatcher and Christina Von Eerie. Ryan Tran, who's the Asian ref on SmackDown, all came up under Ugly. But so I was such a fan that when I started ring announcing for SPW, I asked if I could go to the classes and watch them train. I was 29, and I assumed it was too late for me to be a wrestler. But I would help with ring crew, and I would watch, and I would take notes. And eventually a guy named Sal Tomaselli said, why don't you get in and take a couple bumps? So I started training with the sole goal of having a match, being like the ring announcer who got beat up and had a match. That's what I trained for. And when I had that match, it went really well, considering. I mean, it's not like I'd put it out there and be like, look how good I was in my debut. It was a train wreck. But it went well enough to where I decided I wanted to see how many more I could get. And so I just kept training and kept wrestling. And I'm the one guy, I've never left the SPW Training Academy. I went from being the newest student to the senior student to the owner and trainer. It was just one of those where I was the guy who just never went away, never trying to take over or dreaming of it. But in 2009, Ugly needed a break. So he left the company and I took over and have been running it ever since.
One of the reasons why I compare you to Kevin Sullivan is I've seen you take an inordinate amount of punishment, okay, in a number of matches. I'm going to just ask you the question I think a lot of people ask you. How?
I don't know. Roland Alexander dubbed me Mr. Punishment. So I actually, when he passed, I added that as my moniker. So I'm Mr. Punishment, Sir Samurai, because he would say the same thing. I was, and I don't consider myself tough. I'm not, but for whatever the reason, I can, bump on the floor and get up and be fine. I've survived things. So I push my limits, and I've done some really stupid things. I've done barefoot thumbtack matches. I've done all the hardcore stuff, and I've just been lucky. I don't,
What do
I don't
you
know
think?
why, and I don't know how.
Looking back, what do you think is the craziest match you ever did?
Probably the barefoot thumbtack match, which I've done 3 times, because there's no illusions to that one. They say wrestling's a word. I mean, that's really just taxing your feet. And I actually did that with Timothy Thatcher. That was my first one. Was him and a young lady versus me and my partner in a mixed tag barefoot thumbtack match.
And eventually you get body slammed on those tags, right?
Body slammed, and in one of them I got pile driven in them, and so I had tacks in the top of my head, and it hurts. It hurts, but it doesn't injure. You know what I mean? Like, it sucks.
Okay, yeah.
But I'm addicted to the crowd reaction. I'm not saying I'm going to do another one. Like, there would actually have to be a true purpose to it. But I'll do anything once and see how it is. I've done the barbed wire and the light tubes and more tables than I can count. And I've been lucky.
I broke my shoulder 2 months ago walking across the street with my kid's scooter. So I have no capacity.
That's hardcore.
Yeah.
I got a couple of years on you, but trust me, once you hit 50, I don't know how you're going to take any of this stuff and walk away. In fact, you see so many older wrestlers like The Undertaker still getting back in the ring, and you really got to ask yourself, at what point do you have to say, enough is enough? I mean, when you hit your 60s, don't you think it's about time to hang it up? But
I know guys wrestling in their 70s, friends of mine, Greg Valentine, Jimmy Valiant. They're in their 70s, but it's a different style.
Oh yeah, they can go a little bit slower. So let's talk a little bit more about when you're running the promotion itself and some of the guys that have come through there, and like who have been some of your favorite guys to work with that you've had in both the Wrestle Factory and at SPW.
So SPW, we've been really lucky because we've had people like Timmy, who, I remember his first day of training, and then I remember when he came into my day job to tell me he had signed with the WWE last December, and he's one of my best friends. But probably the 2 people who've influenced me the most outside of the SPW core was Mustafa Saeed from ECW and Drake Younger, who's a NXT rep now, because they had been through so much more in life than I've ever dreamed of going through, and were the 2 most positive people I'd ever met in my life. And I'm not saying I was a dark emo kid before I met them, but they really changed the way I viewed the world. Every show I worked with Younger, and I worked with him probably on 50 shows, he would show up and be so excited that he gets to wrestle on that day. And he had been in Japan, he had been in Germany, and now he's in a Kappa Gymatorium in Sacramento where we're going to draw 50 people, and he was never not up. And that really changed how I viewed life. Like, I strive to be as positive as those 2 individuals.
Very good. Yeah. Well, no, that's important. And one thing that I also wanted to find out about, because this is always a tough thing too, is in APW and in Pro Wrestling Iron and in California Championship Wrestling, when you have to put someone down on the card, or you have to say you just don't have the skills to be on the show. When you make that cut on somebody, especially at the student level, normally I guess you see signs that they're not going to work out, they don't show up or something like that. But have you ever had to cut someone that you felt was trying but just didn't have what it takes to be a good wrestler?
Very rare, maybe once or twice because even before I took over ownership in 2009, I was helping promote and book probably from 2007, 2006 on. I find those people kind of solve themselves for the most part. The people who want it show up and deliver and get better. The people who want to pretend to be a wrestler, the ones who just aren't good, eventually stop coming because they get frustrated that they're not getting the main event, or they're only in 8-man scramble nonsense or battle royals. So the problems almost always work themselves out. I'm an awful promoter because generally once you get in with SPW, you're in. So I use way too many people. Like, our roster is way too big because I never wanted to own a business, and it's not. It is a business, but it's not. It's a family. We're all doing SPW to get better so that we can do other things. So, like, if you're from somewhere else, and most of the guys that get into SPW, it's because I work them elsewhere, and they're like, hey, I really want to work Sacramento. If you come in and have fun and want to keep coming, I'm going to keep using you because I want people who want to be there. I will often say on a booking meeting, if you woke up this morning and were like, oh, I got to go to SPW, go away. Take a break. Because I'm waking up on show day, even 17 years in, excited that I get to wrestle. Not worried about ring crew, not worried about this, but I'm like, I get to see all my people today. And if you don't have that, because Lord knows you're not making any money, then you shouldn't show up anymore. So I find the roster sort of takes care of itself.
It is kind of like a very bizarre family reunion when you get back together.
Yes.
With wrestlers, you know, it's like people that you're not related to, but you need to get along together for whatever. Yeah, for at least the several hours that you're together. And that, you know, but what? Because the one thing is that you've been the most successful wrestling promotion in Sacramento, and there have been a lot that have come and gone, and I've known a number of them that have. Why do you think SPW stays around while these other ones come and go?
Consistency. We, up until April last month, we had run every single month for 20 years. It was our, you know, when we lost, and multiple times we lost the venue, we would do a show in a parking lot the next month until we found our next venue.
I do remember that.
We would just keep going. I have it tattooed on my chest. My motto is endure with honor. You keep going, and you can find a way that things get better. You keep going, and you can solve problems. So companies, I can't even name all the companies that have run in Sacramento or Northern California, but it's generally people who think, oh, I'm going to run a wrestling company and be able to quit my day job. No, it's more like you need to get a second day job to support your wrestling company, because when things are bad, they're really bad. It's not just me, it's the people around me, Drake Frost, Scoot Robertson, my fellow SPW graduates. This is really important to us, and it's not important to us from a financial standpoint. It's important to us because it's what we love. So we're willing to make sacrifices. We're willing to have bad days to keep going. And I think that's why you have so many fly-by-night companies, is they run a show or two and realize it's really hard. And it's not worth it financially, especially at first, so it's easier to give up. Well, I don't believe in giving up. I'm going to keep going until I can't go anymore. It's that simple. And I think that's why we should have had our 20th anniversary show last month with the Unbroken Streak, is because I don't know how not to keep going.
Well, you know, an international pandemic is a decent enough excuse. But see, I think everybody stands back and says, well, if you have an asterisk,
right,
when the world shut down, you guys shut down too. Yeah. Okay, you know, you get a mulligan on that one.
Right.
But, you know, and I know you guys will be up and running. I mean, as soon as it's okay to do shows, you guys will. And
oh, yeah. As soon as it's decided that it's safe and it's allowed, I will start the process of figuring out the next show. I mean, it's that.
And the other thing I will attest to is that you put on a great show even when nobody shows up. I was at those Punk Slam shows in Petaluma where you guys outnumbered the audience.
Yeah.
And you guys still tried hard. I mean, you took some shows, you did some liberties on like the craziness of what the matches were about after a while, because you're like, it's basically like a practice show, but you guys still entertained the people who were there. You guys still cared about the fans that did show up. And I've always seen you put forward that kind of effort. I think that's another reason why SPW stays around, because you won't just tank a show or not show because there's only 14 or 15 paid
One of my traditions is I won't look at the crowd before I go out in front of it, because I don't want to get it in my head. Oh, only 30 showed up tonight. Now I'm depressed. Now I'm down. So I always put things together like it's a packed house, whether it's my company or any company. I don't let the number of fans who showed up dictate what samurai shows up, because I'm certainly not going to punish. Even if only 8 show up, those 8 are going to get a show. I'm going to do what I can to deliver, so that those 8 tell their friends, "Oh, you got to see this samurai guy. He was awesome." Whereas if I walk out and have, they call it, boo-boo face, where I'm just like, "Hey, I'm here to wrestle," and phone it in, that does nothing to grow the industry that I love.
I have a tough question for you.
Yes.
You mentioned before that your promotion is like a family to you, but you haven't been married, you haven't had kids. If you had your life to live all over again, and let's say you can make a good living as a wrestling journalist, and you're clocking 100, 200 grand like a Meltzer or whomever, and never have gotten in the ring and never have taken a bump, would you have traded that?
No, I've got no regrets. Nothing I've done in my life has ever been financially motivated. I rent a house with a roommate, and I get along with my roommate. I like where I live. But the moments I've had in the ring with my friends, I can't think of anything else that tops those. And I've done some crazy things in my life. I've done the Escape from Alcatraz triathlon, where I swam from Alcatraz to San Francisco.
Wow.
That was cool. But nothing tops seeing Timmy have his first match when he was a student. Because in SPW, almost all the students start off as referees, and then they evolve. So Tim used to be my ref. He would travel with me, and I'd be like, "Hey, can you use my student as a ref?" And to see him first match, first international tour, first title, debut on NXT, those experiences, I can't think of anything that tops them.
So Buddy here has gone the domestic route with the wife and 17 kids. You wouldn't trade for that.
That's it. That's enough.
I'm joking. You wouldn't trade for that.
No, I wouldn't trade. I wouldn't trade anything.
Interesting.
And I would argue there's not a lot of 47-year-olds who can say that with confidence, that they're content. Well, not content, because there's a lot of things I'd like to do, but I'm satisfied with where I am for now, and I'll keep fighting to do more.
That's great.
And the industry hasn't just made you so sick that you want out, because there's
right. No, and I see that from people who are 2 years in, where they're bitter because they're not getting the title or they're not the main event. And I'm 17 years. Just like with SPW, last month was the first month in 17 years that I didn't wrestle a match. I had kept a 17-year streak of having wrestled every month. I still show up, and what do I have tonight? And I don't care if it's a guy I don't like. I don't care if it's a guy who can't work. I am excited to get to wrestle. And I will keep wrestling as long as that's the case. But my love of it has not been tarnished. But as I said, I've seen people a year in who, I don't want to take that booking because I don't like that guy, or I don't like that venue. Who cares? It's wrestling. It's so much better than anything else I could be doing with my time.
Well, how do you deal with the fact that you've done it for so long consistently, and now you haven't done it for a couple months? How does that feel, and what does that do how do you cope with it?
Oh, I'm going stir crazy. I'm definitely, all I've done for the last 2 months are run and ride my bike. I've been very good about the social distancing. Tonight, my restaurant reopened, so when we're done here, I have to return to my job for the first time in 2 months.
Oh, congratulations.
Because there's a lot of rules that did not exist 2 months ago. I have to wear a mask and gloves and everything to keep it safe. But it sucks because wrestling's the highlight of my life, and for the last 2 months, I haven't had it. And it sucks because it's what makes a bad week is worth it when I have a good match on Saturday.
What do you think of WWE and AEW still having matches? Do you think it's a danger to the wrestlers?
I don't know. I can't blame them, because obviously wrestling is about momentum. Especially AEW, if they had just all of a sudden shut down 2 months ago, it would have been so much harder for them to then come back whenever it's finally allowed.
Right.
And I try to watch everything, but I admit, empty arena shows are starting to get pretty dull to me. It's I put them on, but now I'm reading or I'm playing on my computer. Yeah. It's not holding my interest as much as it used to do. but I don't blame them for not going away. I mean, I don't know what the contract situations are, but I'm sure the USA Network and Fox would not have been thrilled if Vince had been like, okay, we're taking a few months off, see you in a bit. They have obligations.
What's your take with the film stuff like the Hardys do and Undertaker and AJ Styles? And
I enjoyed it for something different. I don't really want to see that being the future of the business.
Right.
But every once in a while, I mean, it gave the Undertaker something memorable after he's had a few rough goes of it lately. You know, the Boneyard match, he looked like the legend of old, so I thought that was pretty cool. And it was like the problem watching Money in the Bank a couple weeks ago is now there's no difference between Raw and a pay-per-view unless they do a match like that. No matter how good the match is, it's still in an empty arena. So the fact that it's on Sunday doesn't make it more special, you know? So it's
right.
It's a struggle, and I'm hoping they don't have to do that for too much longer. It's weird.
Well, you were talking about some of the best stuff, which is I agree. Seeing what Timothy Thatcher has been able to do is fantastic, and you know, when guys like John Hennigan make it to the pros, make it through Tough Enough, and make it big in the pros, that's fantastic. But there's the other side of it too, which is the unfortunate side, and we've had a number of our friends die in the business as well. And I wanted to take a moment and talk about, it'd be 2 months from now, will be the 2-year anniversary of when Virgil Flynn III died. And I wanted to take a moment and give a little bit of thought in his memory. Most people aren't that familiar with him, but I thought you and I, because we were mutual friends with him and worked a lot of shows with him, maybe you'd like to say something about him if you had a moment to.
Virgil was amazing. Virgil, as you said, died almost 2 years ago, and he was potentially starting to get out there. He worked, I want to say it was Global Force Wrestling was when Jeff Jarrett tried to reopen, you know, his company out at TNA. And I remember being in the crowd in Vegas when Virgil worked Kushida, you know, and Virgil was starting to get out there. But Virgil was another SPW homegrown guy. He was another guy who reffed my matches and then became my opponent. And he eventually opened his own company in Sacramento, which led to a lot of people thinking that there was issues between he and I, which was nothing could be further from the truth. Virgil was the guy, he would work full hours and show up at an SPW show, and no matter what was going wrong, he would just look at me and smile and go, "We got this."
That was his attitude.
That was his attitude. Could not have shown up or whatever. In fact, the first time I wrestled Virgil, he cut his hand during ring crew, and Timmy had to drive him to the emergency room. And it was going to be one of Virgil's early matches in SPW, and I was nervous because I had only been wrestling for about a year, and he ended up showing up during the show, having not gotten stitches because he was tired of waiting. And we went out there and wrestled because Virgil's philosophy was, "We've got this," and he was right. We do. If you work hard, you can accept that you can solve any problem. It may be a challenge. It may not be what you desire. WrestleMania may not have set a record with 80,000 fans. But WrestleMania happened this year, and it was a WrestleMania we're going to talk about for the rest of our lives because it was so unique. And Virgil definitely exemplified that of, we'll make it work. We'll get through whatever the challenge is. And you need more of that in life because so many wrestlers are the opposite. Oh, there's no one here. Oh, this sucks. Oh, this sucks. So you need those shining lights to lift you up when you're down because it's, you know, sometimes it's hard to get it up. And, you know, you need people like Virgil to be like, "No, we got this. Relax."
Yeah, no, he's really missed. And then also the ref, Chan. Yes. And he was he also passed away, unfortunately, recently, too. So it's, you know, the NorCal, it's not as bad as what's going on in New York with the COVID situation, but unfortunately, here in NorCal, we have also our wrestling tragedies too, and it's a tough thing to work so close with these guys. With Virgil, I didn't in any way, shape, or form predict. If you gave me a list of 1,000 people, he wouldn't even have been 1,001 on that list. Probably you'd need another 1,000 for me to put him on there. But he had an aneurysm, and you just never really know when your number is going to come up. It sort of makes you say to yourself, you know, it makes you value things a little bit more, knowing that, you know, every day we've gotten more opportunities that unfortunately Virgil has had to,
Right.
you know, do what we can. And that's one of the reasons why I put together this podcast was I didn't want to let time just slip by while we're all stuck here with COVID and have these stories that we want to talk about, but just
Right.
never really get a chance to voice through. And so to me, that's a great way to get into, you know, what motivates people. And the stories come out. Now, another thing too that you've said is that you're a comic book fan. Now, are you a older collector of older stuff, or do you get new stuff, or both?
New stuff. I've been collecting since '86, so I have all the old stuff. I mean, I don't have everything. I don't have like the original stuff, but from '86 on, I've been collecting nonstop. So,
and what are your favorite books? What are your favorite books?
Avengers was my first book. That was the first thing I collected for years. I'm more of a Marvel guy, but I collect a lot of DC, and I just jump around. Whatever sounds interesting, I'll pick up. I'll collect it for a few issues. If it hooks me, I'll keep going. If it goes in a direction I don't like, I'll stop. But yeah, every Wednesday, before this happened, but every Wednesday I'd go down to the comic book store and pick up my new books.
I've got a collection of about at least 500, more like about 1,000 books. Mostly, a lot of them X-Men.
Yeah.
A lot of Spider-Man. A lot of Hulk and Fantastic Four. I could, unfortunately, this is, I think, one area where Evan doesn't have much expertise in.
I was a 60s and 70s comic book kid, and after college, I pretty much gave it up. But I got more into like Harvey Pekar, American Splendor, you know, as I got older, that kind of thing. But every once in a while in the library, I'll see like a Walking Dead graphic novel and I'll read it. But I haven't really, been into comics since college. But I grew up on Jack Kirby and Jim Steranko, Neil Adams. I was an avid fan back in the day. Yeah.
What are some of the new books that you're collecting now?
Well, the comic industry shut down as part of COVID. There are no new books.
Wow.
Start up again in a couple weeks, but everything 2 months ago, both Marvel and DC shut down basically, and all books stopped coming out, which has never happened in my lifetime. You know?
But before the shutdown, what were you?
X-Men, Batman, Avengers, the big ones.
I go back to Steve Ditko.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then I know you read your share of Mad magazines. You know, Evan, you probably read your share.
I wasn't a fanatical, but I read it pretty regularly. Jack Davis and all those guys. They came out of EC.
Oh yeah, and what's more New York than Mad magazine for the most part?
Yeah, they were sharp, and they were before what was it? National
Lampoon.
National Lampoon. They were before National Lampoon. They were kind of like the guys that originated all of this. Yeah.
Yeah. No, we could definitely use them now. Now, are you watching any of the Marvel Cinematic Universe?
Oh yeah, I've seen them all opening night.
Oh, you saw them all opening night, and so which one of those is your favorite?
The Avengers.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to get you to hate me right now. I had this argument on this film buff page yesterday. I said I enjoy Marvel Universe films. I enjoy them, but when you have the luxury of bringing a dead character back, whether it's in a prequel, an alternate universe, I don't have the same emotional involvement.
Don't forget Alien Clone. Don't forget Alien Clone. That's a really popular one.
So, for example, in Death of a Salesman by Arthur Miller, Willie Loman actually dies. They don't bring him back in a prequel, a sequel, a reboot. What's your take on that?
No, I agree. And Marvel definitely goes to the well way too often on that. Almost every of their first 10 movies, almost every one of them has a major character who appears to die and then is revealed as not dead. And it cheapens it. It's just like with wrestling.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
The more you go to the well with something, the less it matters.
So this one guy was getting really angry at me, and he kept coming at me like the Terminator. But then it's not true to the comic. I go, listen, I'm just telling you how I feel. The character dies, and I go, he'll be back in the next movie.
Sure,
you know?
Exactly. And that's how it is in comics. When they kill a major character, no one actually thinks the character's gone. Even if the writer who wrote it thinks I've killed off Superman and he's not coming back, the next writer's going to bring Superman back. It's that you know that. It doesn't have the emotional impact anymore. But what I wonder is, that's to me who's been collecting since the 80s. If you're a kid who's only been collecting for 6 months and you've not yet experienced that, chances are each one has got a new audience member who's not yet seen it. So maybe my friend and I who collect comics, we like to say, yeah, I don't think they're writing for us anymore.
You know, I hear the fans go, I was in the movie opening night and we were all sitting there crying together like it's a communal affair. And I'm like, dude, I'm crying when I watch the news and they're bringing out like the death toll every night.
Right.
And they're telling you these horrendous stories of, about people dying from a virus. I'm like, that affects me more than Iron Man or Spider-Man, as much as I enjoy it. And I enjoy the movies. I wouldn't watch it if I didn't enjoy it. I just don't have that deep emotional,
Sure.
Don't you think there's sort of a correlation between how comics and some of these movies are made and the product that we provide in wrestling when we're putting together shows? And there's no shortage. We had Peter Bregman on a couple of weeks ago, and he is also a comic book guy and does a lot of comic book stuff. And I think there's a strong correlation between the comic book world and the pro wrestling world. You want to expound upon that a little bit?
No, and there really is, because if you think about it, they're both forms of entertainment that are episodic. So if I have a show next week that I'm promoting, I need to make the show stand on its own and be significant and be memorable. But the moment it ends, I've got to prepare for the next one. So if you take a comic book that's been, if you take a character like Batman who's been around since the 30s, he's going to get killed off multiple times because you have to keep doing things that are going to get people to talk about it.
Cliffhangers and so forth. Yeah, no, I would agree with that. But there's also something about the larger-than-life element of it.
Sure, good versus bad. Wrestling at its finest has a baby face and a heel. I know a lot of people now are just into the moves, but I think the best matches are when you actually care about the good guy and you want to see him defeat the bad guy.
You hit the nail on the head. The word is care. You have to care. And I cared when Daniel Bryan came into WWE and he was climbing the ranks and I was emotionally invested. I haven't cared much, since then.
Right.
So it's like same with the movie. I'm watching Venom on a plane coming home, and I'm like, I don't care about any of this. I didn't care. I didn't care about one thing in that movie. But then you could just watch something else where you deeply, deeply care, and you're devastated if a character dies. So caring is the first step in anything. My radio mentor, Fred Giabold, he was an AWA fan from the 60s. And he used to call wrestling the proletarian performance art, theater for the people, good versus evil. Yep. And there's a story, and you have to care. You want the good guy to get revenge or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah. Buddy, so I stunned Buddy with that.
No. I was letting you have a chance to finish what you were saying. So how do you find in this day and age something that the audience is going to look at and say, this is the good guy and this is the bad guy? What are the storylines that we can tell in this day and age? Because you can't just go Russia versus United States. That was like so easy to do in the 80s. And you can't really do a lot of racial stuff because people will get, we saw with New Jack, he pretty much made that something that you can't do much any further. So how do you generate that sort of heat in today's society?
Well, you keep it simple. You don't have to do elaborate. You figure out somebody young. I'm sure you know who Marcus Lewis is from APW, and the crowd legitimately starts to think, I'd like to see him do more. I'd like to see him against bigger stars. I'd like to see him on top of the card. And so now you have your hero. You know, you don't have to do these elaborate storylines that you have to review every time. You just have the jerk versus the guy you like. And you want to see the guy you like overcome the villain. You know, so you do the tag team that splits up, or the bully is an easy one. And yeah, I've never been fond of the racial storylines. To me, I don't like the phrase cheap heat, because if you're getting heat, that's great. I'm not opposed to that, but it's too simple and not good. Like, I could never, I pride myself, I can do anything. I could never be like a racist heel. I could, like, if a company wanted me to do, I don't have it in me. I could pretend to hate my best friend or whatever, you know, because it's wrestling, but you know, we don't need that. You don't need to be, the storylines don't need to be so cutting edge that 60 Minutes wants to do a story on it, because,
right.
You know, the heel is in the Ku Klux Klan, and you know, it's just have good people versus bad people. And make them actually care about the wrestlers. Make them care about the good people, where they're like, oh, why is Marcus Lewis not on this show tonight? I really like Marcus Lewis. Not only do I want to see him wrestle, but I want to hang out with him during intermission. I want to buy his shirt. You have to make them care. And as Evan said, I can't remember the last storyline the WWE did that I truly, like, cared about. But I cared when Daniel Bryan won the title.
Yeah,
exactly. I remember seeing him at APW at the King of Indies in 2001 and sitting with him in Chevys afterwards, chatting with him. And now to see him main event WrestleMania, I cared. And it's, you know, nowadays, I don't care. They're not hooking me with any storylines where I'm like, oh, I can't wait to see this guy go from mid-carder to main eventer to finally winning the title.
Do you ever have a kid come to you and you just go, listen, your gimmick is generic. We don't need, you know, a carbon copy of Steve Austin, which has been done a million times. And, you know, you got the shaved head and the same tattoo and the same, I'm a badass, I'm a tweener, whatever. I mean, as a promoter, do you ever say, dude, you got to change your gimmick? It's not working.
I don't really. I've suggested things like, hey, what would you think about doing this and changing this and maybe teaming with this guy? But in its different philosophies, my partner, Drake Frost, has been countless gimmicks and countless companies, whereas I've always been Sir Samurai.
Right.
And it's Drake just, not that a lot of people have asked me to change, but an example of that is every year me and my crew go to Las Vegas for the Cauliflower Alley convention. Yeah. We're regulars at that, and I've wrestled on it like the last 10 years. And if you sit and watch the show, we always count the people pretending to be cowboys.
Yeah.
Who aren't actually cowboys.
Right.
Who are pretending to be clowns but have no actual interest in clowns. They're painting their face, and they're literally just, I'm going to pretend to be this. And it's, to me, you'll never get over pretending to be something because somebody says, okay, today you're going to be a rapper, or today you're going to be a cowboy, or today you're going to be this. You have to find something within it that you turned up. And I know that's cliche, but it's, everyone who wants to be the badass like Austin, man, you can't have a roster of real tough badasses. You need the clowns, and I don't mean like doink the clowns, but you need the comedy and the hardcore and the flyer. You need the variety. So I'm not a big gimmick guy. Students all the time like pitch gimmicks to me, and they're so elaborate. And I'm like, but you haven't learned how to lock up yet.
Yeah.
Like maybe you shouldn't be designing gear until you can figure out how to, run the ropes and throw a clothesline. And, most gimmicks for us come out of training where it's like, oh, you would be good like this. And then we start brainstorming it versus me going, I need someone to be a motorcycle rider and just pointing at a guy and going, you now ride a motorcycle. And the guy doesn't own a motorcycle.
That's right.
People can pull it off. I mean, actors all the time pretend to be stuff they're not, but I'm lazy. I want it to be as easy as possible. I want it to make it so people believe the story I'm telling them, and that's a lot easier when you're true to self.
Yeah, the other thing is, as a fan, I'll sit at an indie show and I'll go, I can't tell who the good guy or bad guy is.
Sure.
I don't know who to root for. I don't, and again, there's no emotional involvement. You have to care.
I've had wrestlers where I've asked them, I've shown up at their company and you're wrestling Wrestler X. I'm like, okay, are you a good guy or a bad guy? Oh, no, I let the crowd sort of figure it out.
Yeah.
I'm like, then how do I know what I'm supposed to be?
Yeah.
If you don't know, and it's your house, I'm coming in and visiting. I've never been here. Give me something to work with. And if that person won't commit, then I'm going to decide what I'm going to be, and I'm going to make him be the other thing.
Yeah.
It just amazes me. I mean, being a heel is a lot of fun. Being a face is a lot of fun. But you have to know what you are. I don't understand how you walk through. The tweener is the phrase I hear. If you're trying to be a tweener, how do you know if you're accomplishing it if the crowd's not supposed to boo or cheer you?
I'm gonna quickly do the 30-second laundry list of what promoters should not do, and you can add to it.
Okay.
Don't have 16 matches. Don't go 4 or 5 hours. Don't have 27 guys on the mic. Okay. Don't have a 45-minute intermission. Okay, it's on you. Go ahead. Yeah.
Start on time.
Start on time.
At SPW, we pride ourselves. If the show starts at 5, at 5 o'clock, we go. Yeah, I've worked so many shows where it's an hour after bell time, and I'm like, hey, are we going to start?
Yeah.
Give the crowd what you say they're going to crowd. Give them. You can swerve them and stuff, but don't promise big and then not deliver. You want them to leave wanting to come back to the next show.
Sure.
Be aware of the finishes in the other matches. I've been to shows where 3 matches in a row ended with a schoolboy, and I'm like, did nobody know what anyone else was planning tonight?
Yeah.
Like I don't think enough companies realize that every wrestler's a part of a match and every match is a part of a show. So we all have our role to fill. I can't just go out and do whatever I want because that might step on what other people are doing.
And old school, it would build. It would build to the main event.
Yeah.
Now it's like, just 15 unconnected matches. Some are better than others. Right. It's kind of numbing after a while.
Yeah. No, I agree.
And don't expect the show to promote itself. You know, it's everybody from the person that is putting chairs up to the main eventer needs to get out there and sell tickets to it, because it won't just by its very nature, and no matter how much TV and advertising you do, it's not going to pull in more than 100 to 200 people if you're not going to sell tickets. If people aren't personally accountable for selling tickets, then you're not going to have a show.
I totally agree, but I feel the promoter should pay attention to who's trying to draw. Like, I prefer to have a roster of okay wrestlers who really care and really are trying to help the product than of main event talent who couldn't care less, just as long as they get their PO and don't care. If you don't take pride where you're working, regardless of where it is, don't work there. If the company's beneath you, don't take the booking.
There you go.
That's a great note to end on, except I'd like to find out if you have any projects or anything that's coming up right now, like if you want to, if there's anything, you want to direct people to the SPW website or anything like that, so that people can...
It's hard because we don't know when we're going to be allowed to do this again. SPW will do its 20th anniversary show at some point. It probably won't be the first show back, because I feel like we need to ease into things. But I don't know when wrestling's going to be allowed in my area. I'm on social media, Sir Samurai, on all the various, Instagram and Twitters, and SPW's all on there. I feel like we're in limbo, and we're all just sort of like waiting until we can go back to work.
Sir Samurai, 17 years of this. What's your proudest moment?
I have a lot of them, but probably my favorite memory is I was a heel for the first 7 years in SPW, and I did an hour-long Ironman hardcore match in which I turned face, and at the end of the match, Thatcher, who was the top face, came out and turned heel, and we then had a match, and nobody knew. Like, the wrestlers didn't know, the refs didn't know, the crowd didn't know, and I went from being the most hated to, on that night, the most popular. And it was just great because it was something Timmy and I had put together, and it worked. I think a lot of wrestling is coming up with things and then seeing if they work or not. And the only way you can know if they work is by going out and doing them. But just that feeling of having that moment with one of my best friends and pulling it off was amazing. Plus, as an old school wrestler, I want to see if I can go an hour. It's nice to see that I had an hour in me.
Just doing something and seeing if it works is kind of the philosophy of this podcast.
Sure.
So I want to thank you. This was a really fast hour. I really appreciate the time that you've given us. And we'd really love to have you back as a guest again, especially once SPW gets running and maybe to help promote your 20th anniversary show. Whatever we can do. All right. Thanks so much. And we'll see you all again next week. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Goodbye.